Remember, limit your hands on the table. Or, or limit leaning on it. Hello and welcome back to Adulting Done Right. My name is Ginger, and today I am here with a different guest.
Hi, I'm Alex.
This is my sister Alex. I've invited her on here because we've tried to do something like Adulting Done Right, both separately and together at several different points in our past. One, the most recent, probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
So this is something, with Adulting Done Right, we are here to kind of help guide you and help share our experiences through adulting to help you guys kind of along your journey. So because she and I are so aligned and so much in tune to being passionate about the same things, I figured she would be a great person to bring on here to talk with you guys. Today, what I've really asked her to talk about, and what I've really kind of had her join us for, is we've talked a lot about goals in the past few videos and the importance of setting goals, how to develop and set your goals. But one thing that I kind of think that we haven't really touched on is the fear that's associated with the goals that you have and decisions and changes you make in your life based around your goals, right?
Yeah.
And Alex has kind of gone through, well, I'm not going to say, has made some changes or made some decisions that I think most people, including herself, would probably say there's a good bit of fear or uncertainty associated with them, but she's gone through and done them anyway.
For sure. Yeah.
What I would love is if you would actually go ahead and share kind of a little bit of your passion, where you started out after college, and we'll kind of dive into where she is now from there and how we got there. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. So basically, I went to school not knowing at all what I was going to do for my degree or after graduating, and I kind of just felt my way around in college and eventually settled on a major of creative writing because I always liked writing, and I always thought, maybe I'll be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my degree in creative writing, and it was great, and then I tried to get a job in creative writing, and that didn't go so great. So I kind of
What did you look for?
I had a couple of different ideas. So first I looked around at journalism type jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and I just didn't have the qualification for that at all. And then I thought, okay, well maybe I can get started in publishing,
Mm-hmm.
in some kind of a publishing route. And so I tried to apply to editorial assistant roles.
Mm-hmm.
So jobs as an editorial assistant in publishing companies, so that I could just get started there and then maybe work my way up from there. And I applied to job after job and just nothing. I couldn't get any jobs. So I was waiting tables, trying to just find a job. And then I thought, okay, well maybe I need to get experience just as a secretary first, or as an assistant of some sort. And maybe if I get some assistant experience, I'll be able to get into the editorial assistant type of field. So I applied to jobs of that nature: receptionist,
Mm-hmm.
phone operator, assistant, whatever I could find. And finally I did land a job as a call center phone operator, basically. Communications coordinator was the job title. It's pretty fancy.
But I think I'm going to pause you for a moment, just because I think that's a really good kind of thought process that you had was, oftentimes you get out of school and you get to this point where you're looking for a job. And I know that this happened with me in biology, right? My degree and my major is biology. However, with something so broad like that, just like with writing and creative writing, or English and creative writing, there are so many things that you cover, and you're not really specialized in something. You know what you want to do, but you oftentimes don't necessarily, you have an idea of how to get there, but there are kind of roadblocks that you hit along the way, just like you described. Right. So she applied to all of these different jobs in the field that she wanted to, was not getting any or gaining any sort of traction,
Mm-hmm.
and then so decided that, well, if I can't get a job here, let me at least go get myself some experience that may lend itself to what I ultimately want to do.
Exactly.
Which is how you ended up with the first company that you worked for.
Yeah. So I got the job and I started working at the call center, answering phones, taking information, data entry. It was really basic. And it was cool and it was great, and I did it for a little while, gained my experience. I got tired of it pretty quick also. Answering phones gets pretty tedious, I guess, especially when it's not necessarily right in line with what you were trying to do, but I knew I was gaining the experience I needed. While I was there, I also worked with some nonprofits. I happened to know somebody who was the leader of a nonprofit, and she allowed me to kind of get started a newsletter for the community members of this nonprofit, or the people who were involved, I suppose. And so I wrote a newsletter. I did as much as I could. It wasn't regular by any means, but it was some experience in actually doing some writing, so it was pretty cool, and I was really excited about it.
And that was a really creative way to start kind of getting your toes wet in the writing realm.
Yeah.
Which is a really smart idea, I think, and a good idea for somebody else out there that may be in that same boat. Kind of think of, even if you may not be doing exactly what you want to be doing, think of creative ways that you can incorporate it into what you currently are doing.
Right. And a lot of people will say that you should never do your work for free, but I kind of disagree with that. I just think that how else are you going to gain the experience that's going to help you really get into it if you don't do it for free? And if you aren't willing to do it for free, then maybe it's not necessarily something that you love as much as you think.
And I think that's a really good point. If you're not willing to do it for free, then is it really the right path for you? And I don't necessarily agree with that, you should always be paid for what you're doing. I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because how are you going to, gain that experience? Sometimes it's just about pumping out content or information or whatever it is that you're doing, writing its content.
Yeah. And it was a great cause too. The nonprofit really, they benefited a lot from that newsletter, and they were really sad when I stopped writing it, but it eventually got too busy when I went rogue with my career path.
So what do you mean by went rogue with your career path?
Well, I was working for this company at the call center, and it was such a great company, and they had great benefits, and it was just really alluring, the idea of working for this company that was going to kind of boost me up in life, give me good pay, good benefits, great, I keep saying benefits, but vacation time, healthcare. The healthcare plan was incredible.
You had a great retirement plan too.
Yeah, the retirement plan was awesome, and I was just like, maybe I should look into ways that I can stay with this company, because they're going to set me up for a pretty comfortable life. So I did. I started looking for other roles within the company, because I didn't want to just answer phones all the time. So I found a job within the company that seemed like something I was qualified for, maybe, and I decided to apply for it. And I applied for it. I spent a lot of time on my cover letter. I wrote a really good cover letter. My mom helped me out with it a little bit, and we just wrote this cover letter that was A+, man. It was the best cover letter. I wish I still had it, actually. I don't know where it is. But anyway, so we sent it in, and they called me back, and I think because I already worked for the company, I had a really good in, and they, they gave me my supervisor gave me a reference, and it was all good, and I ended up getting the job. It was not easy. It was hard. I had to go through 8 interviews or something like that. It was an intense kind of thing, but it was.
I know, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah, it was hard. But I managed to get the position, and it was a really great opportunity for me, and I was really excited about it. And again, here I was cozying up with this really great company, so
completely off course of what you originally intended.
Yeah,
and the original goal for what you had wanted.
Right. I kind of gave up on my goals, and that's when I stopped writing the volunteer newsletter, and I just kind of switched off everything, and I started going full force with this job, thinking, okay, now I'm gonna shape myself to be the person that can do this job, and maybe my new life course is being mapped out for me. I was wrong, of course. I eventually started feeling the effects of giving up what I wanted to do, and feeling unfulfilled, and just kind of like a sellout. I sold out what I wanted for the comfort and convenience of a good job with great benefits, basically.
I will say though, there's like, those are things to be, I mean, those are, how should I say this? Great benefits, you know, a great retirement plan, a company that takes care of its people in that respect is something to be
You want that.
Yeah,
Definitely want that.
It's something that you should look for. It's something that you should want. However, you know, and what she did and that moment that she had was realizing and saying, okay, you know what, even though these things are really great, do they still make sense for what I want in my life? And sometimes that answer is no. Sometimes it's yes. Sometimes those, you know, things far outweigh any other option or anything else that you may think of or want. You know, those may be the important things for you, and that's okay. But you have to be able to like sit back and look at yourself and really kind of weigh out those options.
And I weighed them out for a long time.
Oh, I know. How many years were you with the company?
I was there for about
almost 4 years.
It was almost 4 years. 3 years in the specific position, the new position. 1 year, almost a year in the call center. I didn't quite make a year there. I left. I got the new job, the new position before a year. So it was almost 4 years. And it was great. I learned so much.
I was getting ready to say yes.
Yeah, I got so much more skills and experience, and it was a wonderful thing for me. And I really actually struggled. This is where the struggle really came in, was making the decision to, okay, do I stay here in the comfort of this incredible job and just be okay with that? Or do I branch out and try to start working towards those goals that I once upon a time had? And it was really scary. It was scary to think of leaving this awesome, comfortable job.
Because something that we haven't talked about is kind of, and I think it's exactly what you're describing, but is this loss aversion, right? And this fear that you have of losing the things that you already have.
Right. I was making good money, and I knew that if I wanted to try to go back in the direction of writing, I was gonna not be making good money because, you know, writers aren't the best paid.
Or you were gonna have to make sacrifices at least.
For sure, definitely. I was gonna have to take, even not counting pay, a step back in my career. I was gonna have to start over basically, because I was gonna be starting in something that was new. But I didn't just do it blindly, because I knew that wasn't the smart thing to do. So about a year before I left my company, I started making a plan. And that plan was, okay, start working towards getting more experience writing once again. And I knew I already had the experience from doing the free writing, so now I wanted to try to get some paid writing jobs. So I decided to start looking for freelance opportunities. And that was really where I got my leg in the door. Of course, the freelance opportunities that I found posted online were just, you know, not giving me any bites at all. They didn't want to hire me. I applied to so many positions, so many, not positions necessarily, but jobs. I applied for so many freelance jobs, and they didn't really give me any leg up. But I didn't want to give up. I was pretty determined, so I started sending my resume out to local magazines and newspapers. And finally, one of them got back to me, and they were like, you know, we do have the need for some content writers. Why don't you send us some samples over, and we'll take a look at what you got. And I said, okay, sure. You know, I sent it over, and they looked it over, and they thought, okay, yeah, if you have any ideas for stories, pitch your ideas, and we'll give you an assignment. And I said, great. So now I have to figure out how to come up with a story idea and pitch it, and then try to write about it. And it was hard.
Oh yeah, especially when you spent 4 years out of essentially that game.
Exactly. And at this point, it was about 3. Because I started doing the freelance writing a year before I left. But yeah, it was really hard, and I had to just kind of feel my way in the dark, so to speak. So I sent them some ideas. They happened to like one of them, thank goodness, and they let me write an article, and I did. And I wrote it, and it got published, and I got my first paycheck from writing, and it felt so amazing. I was over the moon excited about that. Just like,
I can imagine, especially like once you're, I think, you know, progress is one of the greatest forms of motivation, because getting that first article published was like the affirmation of, okay, yes, I can do
It
this.
was like the treat that I got from all of my hard work of learning the tricks.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I got that article published and I got paid for it, and I just thought, okay, now full steam ahead. You know, I'm ready to start pursuing this full, you know, blast. And I wrote a couple more articles for that same magazine, got paid for those, and then I started applying to other writing jobs, and I got some interviews. Like, before I wasn't getting any interviews, but I finally started getting some interviews for some writing jobs, and I didn't get any of them. And it just wasn't going my way.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was frustrating, but I kept the alerts on my phone so that I would know every time a new writing job came about. And I just kept applying. I just kept on applying. I wanted to get a stable job in writing because I wanted to be able to not have to work so hard. Because when you're doing a full-time job and doing freelance work on the side, that's a lot of work. I mean, it's 2 jobs, you know?
Yeah. Or even just, you know, the fact of having a full-time job and then trying to find another job while you have a full-time job.
Yeah.
'Cause finding a job can be a full-time gig.
Yeah,
Just
for sure.
trying to sift through all of the things that are out there to find an opportunity that may be right for you.
And then actually writing your resume to gear it for that job and coming up with a cover letter, and it's a lot of work.
Oh, I know.
It's a lot of work. And then having to like take off work to go to the interviews, that's kind of, you know, that's a thing. So finally, it seems like things started to turn around. I got an interview with another company to do writing, and I got the interview through a temp agency. So, and it seems like that's been my kind of good luck, because I actually got my first job in the call center through a temp agency too.
Which is another thing, if you haven't checked out any temp agencies, see what temp agencies are local for you, because there are also like area specific temp agencies for different industries. That's what I'm trying to say. I was trying to figure out what I was trying to say. But industry specific temp agencies. So that's always something to check out if you're in a specific field and you're trying to find work within that field. Sometimes that can be the help to get you like your foot through the door, because you have somebody that's going to bat for you and kind of pushing you along the way.
Yeah, it's always good to have someone backing you up, someone who can help and say, we think that this is a really good candidate. And that's what I had in both situations, for my first job in the call center and here for this new job. And I ended up getting the position, and I was just, I couldn't believe it. I was so scared though. I was excited that I finally got a full-time it was a temp position, so it wasn't really full-time. So it was actually really scary to think about leaving my benefits behind completely. I was gonna have to leave them. I wasn't gonna get any new benefits because I was working as a temp.
Yes.
And that was the scariest thing ever. And I had support, you know, from my spouse, and I felt secure enough that this was something that I could do. And after thinking it over a lot and, you know, determining that this is what was the right move for me, I decided to take the position, and I left my cushy sellout job, finally. So that is kind of how I did that. And that's not the whole story.
No, it's not.
We won't say that, you know, this was my dream job and everything was great after that, because it definitely wasn't.
No, and that's a good point. It's like sometimes you make these decisions, right? When you get out of school, it's really hard, depending on your field and your area of interest, it's really hard to get a job, right, that's in your field of interest.
The hardest.
Yes. And it can be hard to land that quote-unquote dream job straight out the gate. So you have to make choices that may lead you down a different path. But you have to remember, exactly, you know, the path is not a straight path. It's definitely a winding up and down, curved, all over the place kind of road.
And something I will say is, I think a lot of people think that the path should just bring about things for them to take advantage of. And you're walking down the path and then you see, oh, okay, here's the thing that I need next, and walking down the path and here's the thing that I need next. And that's kind of not how it works. Or I think some people think that they see the destination, but they can't find the path to get there. I think that's like a common thing that happens. And what I will say is, you just can't walk down the same path and hope that the things come up that you need. And you can't just sit there and stare at what you want and think there's no path, I can never get it.
Right.
What you have to
You
do...
can't just sit there and see it and think that it's going to come to you,
Right.
essentially is what you're saying
Yeah.
as well.
Exactly. You have to create your path. You have to build the path as you go. And sometimes you have to change directions because there might be a roadblock or something that prevents you from going the fastest way. And you just build that path, and it looks different for everybody. And but
Absolutely.
if you keep working on it, eventually it will get you where you need to go. And it can take any amount of time. But
yeah, and even with even as Alex said, with where she is right now, it may not be the end all be all, but it's also helped her redefine her own goal. And oftentimes, it's gonna feel and it's gonna look like your goal or the path that you're taking isn't gonna work out until it finally does, until the last moment. And that's something that you also have to realize. I think a really good point is that if you're trying something, right, if you're going for something and you fail the first time, let's say you're working towards your goal and you fail right out the gate, and then you decide, oh, you know what, this isn't for me. Maybe that really wasn't your ultimate goal, because if you're so willing to give up on it, then maybe you really need to think a little bit more about what it is that you want, because ultimately, if it's your goal, if it's your true, what you want, then would you really give up on it so quickly? And Alex is a perfect example. She finished school, got a job to get experience, realized that she kind of went down this path and brought herself a little bit further away from her ultimate goal of writing and being in that sort of career. And so started thinking of ways and started creating a plan. I think that was the biggest thing that I think you mentioned that you need to realize is you have to start creating a plan. If you realize that you're somewhere that you don't want to be, it's not going to magically change for you. Right. You have to take steps, and this is what she was saying, you have to take steps to change it and put yourself back on that path.
Exactly.
I think one really good thing to note throughout your whole process of kind of defining your goals and kind of as you're figuring out this path in life, because again, your goal, as Kevin and I have talked about, is a destination on a roadmap. But it's not necessarily, having a goal does not give you the path or the trip or the route that you have to take. That's for you to figure out, right? As you're on your journey. And at times you may reach a point where you think you're at your goal. However, something else, or you may realize something else about yourself that kind of helps you redefine or readjust your goals. And I think you've had this moment recently yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I still love writing, and I still ultimately, I want to be a writer, and I am a writer right now. And I think that's a writer. Great. It's awesome. It feels so good to finally be a full-time writer and in my career, and I'm loving that right now. But I have noticed that my needs and my goals have changed a little bit, and I've developed new passions that I maybe didn't recognize before. And so recently I decided to start doing a yoga training program so that I can become certified as a yoga teacher. And I know that seems completely different from writing, but it's really not, because ultimately I'm working towards a harmony that I kind of want. And as a writer, I want a little bit more freedom. And so working at a full-time job I work in an advertising company. As a writer in an advertising company requires a lot of my time, requires a lot of my energy, and I have to, sit in office all day, every day, and, that's not necessarily my cup of tea. So, I like movement, I like energy, I like exercise, and I love yoga, so I thought, why not just do this? Why not do it? And so I'm doing it, and it was something that I thought about for a long time before I actually bit the bullet and signed up for it. I thought about it for probably almost a year, I'm gonna say. Probably about a year. And then I finally made the decision to pursue the certification, and I'm knee deep in that process right now, and it's exhausting and it's amazing at the same time. But ultimately, I think it's gonna bring me closer to other goals that I have, maybe more freedom in my career. If I am a yoga teacher and a writer, what's that going to look like for my life? How can I kind of make that work for me? And that's where I am right now. I'm feeling out, what's the next step in my journey towards the things that I want. And You know, it never ends.
It doesn't. And I think that's a really good point, and it's something that, you know, I think ultimately a lot of people get to a point where they've accomplished what they perceive their life goal or one of their life goals to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get there and they feel this kind of uneasiness because maybe they're not as happy as they feel like they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then at that moment, I think a lot of people, they choose to either ignore it, or some of them choose to kind of tackle it head on, or some of them kind of sit with the feeling for a while to kind of see what comes from it. And I think sometimes sitting with it for a while and kind of seeing and evaluating what it is you want and kind of being a little bit more introspective with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And you've kind of figured out, okay, well, what is it that I may be missing, and what can I now integrate into my life to kind of, again, ultimately, what can I integrate in my life to ultimately help me redefine my goal?
Exactly.
And now make it something new.
Exactly.
Because just because it's a new goal, just because you need to redefine it, doesn't make your previous goal any less valid.
Right.
It just means that you are growing and evolving and changing, and we all do that
Mm-hmm.
throughout life.
Exactly.
We're not static beings,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. So that's kind of it, I guess. That's how you can achieve your goals. If you have goals that you kind of are not sure how to achieve, just carve the path. Just create it. Just figure out how to get there, you know?
And know that it's not going to be without fear.
Right.
It's something that's going to come up. You're going to be scared to kind of take that next step at times.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think the most important thing is to really sit and evaluate, okay, and think about it. If it's something that you're thinking about or you've been thinking about for a significant amount of time, start developing a plan and start to, taking action towards making a change.
Yeah.
Because you sitting and thinking about it even longer isn't going to make the change for you.
And sometimes it takes sitting and thinking about it to realize that it's something you really want. I mean, when you want something, you spend a lot of time thinking about it. And when you've been thinking about something for a long time, that's kind of your cue that, okay, hey, maybe there's a reason that I'm thinking about this so much. Maybe I should do something about it. You know, if it doesn't go away, if it's not something that just kind of vanishes, then, it's something that might be worth trying, something that might be worth working towards.
Exactly, I agree. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember, we are Adulting Done Right. Make sure you subscribe for 2 videos a week. If you like what we're doing, definitely give this video a thumbs up. If you like Alex's experience and you relate to it, definitely make sure you give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions for her or myself, you can leave them in the comments below, and I will partner up with her and we'll try to get those answered for you.
Yeah, for sure.
But thank you so much. And again, hope you guys have a great day. Bye. That we keep.
Like I said, I was going too rogue, so we would talk about one topic and then pause.
Spooky.